I just want to start out by talking about the fact that I'd imagine just by nature of being in a fantasy series that you undergo certain training, you have to learn certain skills just because your character knows how to do it, whether it's how to ride a horse or wield a sword or be in a fight. So I'm curious, what is the coolest skill that you now have for the rest of your life just because your character needed to know how to do it?
Well, I don't know if I'll have it for the rest of my life, but maybe if we do another season. But I really loved horse riding.
Well, I did have to do some horse riding training.
I'm 100% going to say horse riding. Had no idea how to do it before, was absolutely terrified, really like shaking at the idea of getting on this like incredibly majestic, huge animal with a mind of its own and 4 very powerful legs that could run off into the distance.
I mean, I don't have my horse on me anymore, so I can't bring that one out, unfortunately.
Come on, you got to always keep a horse around, man.
Yeah, I know. Sword fighting is almost my thing. You know, I'll just see like a broom and then just whip it out. So I guess it's sword fighting.
Well, I'm pretty nifty with swinging the staff now in a way that I wasn't before.
I mean, Jake, you pick up loads of weird skills along the way.
You know, I did a little bit of horse riding when I was younger, but I mean, just like 1 or 2 lessons. But to really be able to get comfortable riding a horse and galloping and cantering and you know, taking horses through forests, it was a very incredible thing to be able to learn and to do.
One of the things that I did while doing this character, we're kind of working with this character, is I went to Scotland to basically do foraging, which is living off the land, like being able to live off the land. So berries, nuts, you know, like be able to find mushrooms that you can eat. And that was because this character is incredibly self-sufficient, is able to live out, you know, on the land. And so I wanted to know what that would look like, you know, like, what would that feel like to be out in the middle of nowhere and be able to kind of live without any kind of food source, or, you know. So that was the skill that and then I went around with this lady and she kind of taught me all the things you can and can't eat, and it was just, that was kind of a really cool skill that I think I'll always be able to take. I mean, I've forgotten most of it, but like at the time I was like, I think I could live out in the Scottish wilderness, you know, and that was one of those skills I was like, oh, I've got to keep learning this, you know.
That is really impressive. I've asked a few of your castmates and I got a lot of like, oh, I can ride a horse now. You can live out in the freaking wilderness, man.
Right,
that is
exactly. I know, exactly. I felt like that was kind of important to know.
I came pretty well prepared for this because when I was a kid, I was a huge fantasy fan. I used to go out in the, you know, forest in the weekends and do like live role playing and stuff. And when all the kids played football, I took fencing lessons and horseback riding because I wanted to be Robin Hood, you know? So I was like, I've always been a fan of the genre. And then I spent like, you know, 5 years on Vikings doing that stuff. So I felt like I came prepared for Merlin.
Now, where are all those kids that were playing football now? Because they're probably not professional football players, but you took these skills and became a professional. So I'd say things worked out pretty well for you.
Exactly. Yeah.
With this training, I had to do bareback horse riding because Nimue and we share a horse. Mm-hmm. She's on the saddle and I'm off the saddle behind her. So I'm right on the horse's hips. So I had to practice getting comfortable with that. So if that opportunity ever comes around again, then, you know, I know what I'm doing.
You're in. Would you ever, like, I know you've ridden horses before. Would you ever now consider just doing it bareback since you know how to do it?
Sure. Why? I mean, I've got mixed feelings when it comes to riding horses, but if there was no way out and I had to get on a horse, then yeah, no saddle needed.
We had horse training. Is that even what you say?
Sounds right. It sounds good.
Horse riding lessons.
Yeah.
So now I feel like I feel a little bit more confident.
Yeah.
You know, I could get on there and like know what to do ish. I think that's kind of the biggest skill I learned.
So if you're at a party and they're like, oh my God, we have an emergency. Can anyone ride a horse? Would you raise your hand and be like, I can, I got this?
Absolutely not. There's no way. No, there's no way. I'd be so afraid. I'd be like, where's the trainer? Where's the mark? The horse isn't hitting the mark.
If you and I are at that party and someone says that, I'm just going to go,
Oh my God.
She can ride a horse.
No,
There's a whole show where she does it.
Sword fighting feels it's very empowering, but because you don't want to bring an archery skill out at a party. That's a bit weird. But,
Fair enough. So what you're saying is, if you were ever at a pub and someone like challenged you to a duel and whipped out a sword, like you're good to go.
Guaranteed. You know, my friends know as well. You know what I mean? They just step aside and just.
They're like, dude, he's got sword training. What do you want me to do?
You know, exactly.
You know, one of the themes of the show that I really thought was interesting was sort of this thin line between gift and curse. You know, someone might be able to do something or experience something, and everyone outside their life says, "Oh my God, that's amazing. That's a gift. How lucky you are." And then the person who has that goes like, "Not really. It kind of sucks. You guys don't know what it's like." I'm curious, what is an aspect of your business, of the entertainment industry, of acting, that the rest of us might look at it and go, "Oh, that's fantastic. I love that." But you look at it and go like, "It's not as great as you would think it is."
The idea of fame, which is just basically just people recognizing you for your work, which is really amazing. And that's great. But I think the idea of it probably seems a bit more glamorous from the outside than the reality of it.
Is there an aspect of it in particular that you just like, if we were to experience that, we would realize it's not quite as glamorous as we think it is?
I don't know. I don't know if anyone can tell you what it's like, because also everyone's journey is different. And I also feel, I have to say, I feel very lucky with not only the support that I have in terms of family and friends and a team, but I also really love my fans and the interactions that we've had. So I feel quite lucky to be in the situation that I've been in.
Fair enough.
The thing that I think you got to realize is the emotionality of being an actor, although it's like really interesting to watch, it's a fucking nightmare to live with. Like with, you know, whether you're living like somebody who has to live with me, you know, like crying all the time, like always over dramatic, all of those kind of things. They work if you're asked to do it, but then God, you wouldn't want to live with it. Like my brother would say, it's a fucking nightmare. Do you know what I mean? Living with an actor. So I think it looks really cool to be this kind of like very emotionally open human being, but we never get anything done. You know, we're terrible at like the most basic kind of tasks of like, you know, everyday tasks of like doing the dish, you know, everything's an emotional journey. So I would say that's tiring and irritating to live with, I would imagine.
I think, I mean, talent aside, because I think that's not a curse in a sense, but I think our perception of fame, perhaps, I think that is something that a lot of people strive for and have, you know, a preconceived idea about. And I, you know, I've seen a lot of people suffering from fame, and you know, we all have, and it can be a tough challenge to face. So I think, yeah, that would be one.
Celebrity culture.
Well, meaning what exactly?
I think idolizing celebrities, you know, whether it be actors or musicians, I don't think that's a healthy way to go. And yeah, I think it can be a curse, whether or not you want it. I think there are some dark sides to it.
I guess the process of like the research and the method that you go through, because I think people just think you put on a costume and then you just go to work and it's just like you're just saying words. But really, like, to map out, because we shot this over 10 months, so to map out a character, it's not that, it's like, I love it to bits, but it is grueling, the steps that you need to do to master your craft, so that people can believe what you're doing. So I guess that side of it is like, no one sees that, but the whole point of acting is not to show your homework. So
right.
Probably the amount of time that you spend by yourself in hotel rooms. I mean, it sounds really great. You're like, you get to travel to these amazing places, and believe me, I am not complaining, because it is great. But it's definitely being away from your family. I mean, I was away from my parents for like 11 months last year, and that was like crazy, because we all like usually live together and we're so close. So not seeing your family, I mean, I'm so glad that I'm doing it in this time with FaceTime, you know?
Yeah.
Like, it's pretty,
normally when we do these, we're traveling to LA or we're traveling to New York. So I totally get the living out. It's been weird not traveling and not being in a hotel, but it's been kind of nice doing this. Like, my dog's right there. It's fantastic.
Aww.
And, you know, I was always a kid. I was really nerdy growing up, and I always wanted to try to sort of escape the real world. And I would do that by breaking open a fantasy novel or, you know, watching a movie or a TV show or whatever the case may be. So I'm sort of curious, whenever you're on a show like this and you're sort of emerged, surrounded by this fantasy world, and then they call cut and you have to go home at the end of the day. Is the real world just a little bit more boring than usual, having spent all day in this sort of fantastic world?
You know, we shot for 10 months. So in a way, I think the fantasy world became more reality than the real world, because we were just spending more time on set, or at least I did, being on set every day. But now definitely, you know, after a couple of months being away from it, I went and saw, my friends took me to see this castle the other day, and I texted Tom Wheeler, who's our exec producer, immediately, because it brought back all that excitement of what we'd been able to see on set. And, you know, not horse riding every day and not sword fighting. You kind of, I think you miss it.
Yeah. So whenever you see like a castle that you think is cool, can you text the showrunner and be like, dude, I want to shoot here. Like, this is really cool. Get the cameras. Like, let's go. Like, do you wield that power?
Do I wield that power? Sadly, no.
Not with that attitude.
No, I have a really great relationship with Tom and with Frank Miller, and I think that's a really amazing thing to be able to have. But I think the other thing is that we connect kind of as semi-nerds. I am not by any means on the same level that those two are, but I still really appreciate, you know, all the kind of nerdy things that go into it, and the castles and the knights and dressing up and all that. I really love. So we have a good little text going along.
I think it makes the real world more fantastic, you know, and it sort of opens your eyes to the magic of our reality and the fantastic nature of our reality as well.
You know, I think this show was in some ways trying to reflect a lot of aspects of our reality. Mm-hmm. So I don't think, you know, it was too out of reach, you know, having to relate to that world. I don't think, you know, there are going to be boring and exciting moments in any reality that you live in. So I didn't feel as though when I came home it was any less interesting.
No, it's actually more interesting because you start like finding new things in your day-to-day life. But it's funny. It's in the fantasy world, it's hard because, you know, I played a role about Barack Obama, and it's easy to go around the street and test it out, test the character out amongst like parties or wherever you were. But with something like this, I can't just whip out a sword and start talking.
Not with that attitude, man.
Yeah, no. I mean, I'm sure it'd be a cool party trick, but no, it's I guess that's.
I promise you, if the next time I'm allowed to have a party, that we can have a party, you're coming over, and I'm just gonna every time someone walks in, I'm like, guys, look what he can do with the sword. The horse is out back. We're ready to go.
Yeah, no, I will say, coming off of Kirsten, I went onto a different show with the BBC, which is an amazing drama. But I kind of turned up to set, and my character is in a jail, and they were like, "Yeah, we're just gonna put your hair up on your head and give you a grey tracksuit, and off you go." And I kind of was like, but where's the giant sets and where's the mountains and it's
where's
kind
my
of
horse?
Reality. Yeah, where's the horse? So it was it's definitely a bit of a shoot to reality. Equally as amazing, but just a bit different.
You know, I love that we sort of get to learn a little bit more when we get a backstory about the Lady of the Lake, because I feel like we've gotten the King Arthur story so many different times, but we've never really gotten a true sort of fleshed out backstory about who she was. Who is another fictional character in the realm of pop culture that you would love to get a backstory of, just to know more about who that person was?
Interesting question. I think I would choose Aragorn from Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
You know, like, who was he when he was Strider and this, like, you know, a ranger and living up in the north and stuff? That would be cool. I'd like to see that.
That would be cool. Sort of see him like kind of like, you know, I guess running away from his destiny for a while and kind of like foregoing his, you know, the family name. That's a great. Now I really want to see that. That's awesome.
Yeah, what was he up to, you know, up in the forest there for all those years?
Oh, like someone, it could be anyone?
Yeah, any movie character, TV character, book character, whoever you're thinking.
Maybe Iron Woman?
Yes.
I think that'd be great.
I would watch that show.
Yeah, that'd be great. Like, I'd love that. It's like such a cool comic too. So probably Iron Woman.
That's a good question. I actually did a film called Ophelia, and I feel like once we kind of were scratching at the surface of it, Ophelia from Hamlet, it's one of those stories that I think is like fascinating. I think her journey throughout in the Shakespeare world really needs to be fleshed out more, even as we go on. So I'd say that one.
That's cool. Did Shakespeare get into? Sorry, excuse me for my ignorance. Did Shakespeare like get into the world of prequels and sequels, or was he sort of like a one and done kind of guy?
I think he was kind of I mean, from what I know, I mean, I don't want to get in trouble now, so I'm probably
right, exactly. I was afraid to like say anything.
God, that's a really good question. I would like to know more about. Well, you see, like when I grew up, this is quite an English-centered answer.
That's okay.
But there's when I grew up, there were certain like things that we would watch, and I was always like, they're so weird. They're so weird. It was a show called Movement on TV.
I'm Googling this as soon as this interview is over. I'm very excited about this.
Actually, do you know who I'd love to know more about is, you guys don't have it here, is Pingu. Pingu is this little penguin that lives in the Arctic. It's like a show that you just grew up on in England, is watching Pingu. And I just like to get, like, I'd like a whole show about Pingu. I think Pingu's got it's going to have its like time back in the sun, because let me tell you, when you were a kid, Pingu was like.
That's what I'm Googling you. I mean, you've turned me on to so much stuff. I've been writing down.
Anyone in
pop culture.
In pop culture, get more of a backstory of. Yikes! Dead or alive?
Sure.
Ooh. Let's go for Danny DeVito, seeing as he's one of my favorite people in the world.
I don't know. I feel like that's a difficult question to answer, because in a way it's hard to know unless someone brings it up. So I have to think a bit more about that one.
Okay, fair enough. All right. Well, if it happens and you think of it, then just call me and then we'll get it figured out.
I'll let you know for sure.
All right, fair enough.